Welcome to He Say, She Say, the live stream where legal principles meet the heart. I'm Shar, founder of Law for Love, the most special place in the legal system in Atlanta. And after nearly 14 years as a divorce attorney, I realized that the very same tools that we use to end marriages can actually be used to save them. So I completely changed my path and now am here to help you navigate the challenges of love, commitment, and communication. Join us as we explore how to rebuild and strengthen your marriage one conversation at a time. Hello, and what's the good word? Welcome. And tonight I am looking forward to absolutely confronting and aggravating the husbands and really giving you some perspective and some insight that we learned in my marriage that completely changed the game in terms of how I show up as my husband's wife and how he shows up as my husband. And so I am confronting you specifically tonight on this topic because too often in my experience, I've met men who really do not like talking about phenomenon such as witchcraft, men who don't really want to talk about the dark side of spirituality. They rather ignore it. But I want to make this your business in this episode because it's absolutely imperative for your role as the gatekeeper of your marriage. And so let's go ahead and dive in about the witch who tricked your wife. Now, the premise for this conversation is this movie called The Wicker Man. And I don't know if you've seen The Wicker Man before. If you've never seen The Wicker Man, then I want to encourage you to get that movie and to take a look at what the modern culture is and our attitudes towards men. Because shortly after halfway through the movie, you begin to understand that the Wicker Man world was a world run and controlled by women where men were only necessary for their physical strength and for having babies. Now, if that doesn't sound like the modern culture that we're in now, then you may not have been paying attention. And this is why the conversation is such an important conversation for every single husband in the house. Um, and I'm going to need you to bear with me when it comes to my ability to read these slides. It's like the text is too big or something. Okay, so again, I'm bringing in perspective from a person who has received more phone calls and have had more clients than I can count, who got to the point where they're like, I'm tired. I don't want to be married anymore. I just want to find a way out. Divorce is my path to happiness. And for too many of those relationships, the wife was tired of leading. And we're going to talk about the ways that a lot of wives are leading, which leaves wives feeling burnt out, tired, and ready to give up. And most wives are ready for our husbands to lead. We want leadership, we desire leadership. And when you watch female behavior very closely, you will see that we are always searching for leadership and committing our loyalties in places where we feel led. And leadership in the mind of most husbands may not exactly be what your wife is expecting or what your wife is looking for. It may not be the way that you were taught or trained. It may not even be the type of leadership that you've seen modeled for you. But I want to help you understand the connection between your leadership and the cultural phenomenon of witchcraft that is literally undermining many marriages, many households, convincing and luring many wives to believe that they can find or we can find happiness outside of our relationship with our husbands. And that's not to say that there aren't some marriages that are completely toxic. There are some abusive relationships, there are violent relationships, there are relationships that probably should never be because there's more hurting one another than there is helping one another. But I do come up from a standpoint that if you're not dealing with physical violence, if you're not dealing with the commission of crime, then it's never too late for love when you have the right information and you have the right tool set and you have the right attitude towards the work it takes to get your marriage in a place of purpose. So, generally speaking, there are three ways that husbands hurt their wives. Religious men are typically the type of men that demand respect from a place of position. I'm the man, I'm the head of the house. According to the Bible says to submit to me, so you need to submit. But there is this mandate and this expectation that the wife will submit without the husband first exhibiting a lifestyle committed to discipleship. Your wife isn't seeing a discipling process in your life. She's not seeing any accountability that you have in your life to anyone. And it it leaves her feeling disrespect because when you lack accountability from a place of self-righteousness, from a place that a woman should submit, but there is no fruit coming from the things that you profess as your faith, the things you say you believe in, when the Bible itself is not the mirror of your life, then you become an echo chamber of your own self-righteousness and your own opinions and beliefs without recognizing that your wife is losing respect for you because of your religion. In fact, many times, I'm going to get there, but many times you will find wives begin to reject your faith or reject your church or reject even your religious leader if there is a lack of evidence in your lifestyle that matches all of your talk. So when I say religious, I'm speaking about men who talk more about their faith than they act out or walk out their faith and the impact that it has on your wife and the way that she views your lack of leadership when you are a religious person. And then there are husbands who are passive. And this is a husband who's kind of steps out of the way or just allows responsibilities that are the responsibilities of the relationship, responsibilities of the family, responsibilities of the home to leave things undirected, unmanaged, or left for your wife to figure out on her own and without your effort. And so, what often happens with the passive husband is he's not only leaving his wife in a position to carry a heavier load of the family's responsibility, but then he's also not expressing gratitude or appreciation for the giftings that his wife is operating in when she's showing up and she's carrying out these responsibilities. The next type of husband is the aggressive husband that wants to dominate or enforce your right of being the head of the family but you're doing so from a place of aggression and attempting to dominate whenever your wife is coming to hold you accountable and coming or challenging you about things that you should be doing better or differently. And aggression will show up in the form of yelling, stonewalling, blaming, or pulling rank on your wife rather than owning responsibility for things that she's bringing to you and challenging you to change. And a lot of times this aggressive behavior, it shows up where the wife is touching on something that a husband is insecure about, but he doesn't want to be vulnerable about that insecurity. So to keep his wife away from that place, that insecure place, he will become aggressive to push her away. I think it's this text. I just this font is just rough on me. Okay. So why these things hurt her? Well, because most wives desire our husband's leadership. Most of us. Most wives well, I'm not even going to say most, all wives have our own minds, our own opinions, our own perceptions and way of seeing things. And so when confronted by a husband who is affronted or who interprets disagreement as disrespect, it can be hurtful because she's no longer valued for having her own mind or her own opinion. She's expected to just suck it up and agree with what her husband is saying. And I know, the brothers of Law for Love don't move like this, but again, I'm speaking directly to things that I've seen lead families into divorce and things that my own marriage had to navigate to get to a place where we didn't get taken out by the phenomenon of divorce. And a lot of men, especially religious men, will expect agreement without honoring or valuing that their wife has her own mind and her right to disagree. Now, the way you disagree, that's another conversation. And the reason why these things hurt your wife is also because she's a leader too. Your wife is a leader. And as we go on in this further in this conversation, you're going to see exactly what I mean when I'm pointing out her leadership. But this also has a lot to do with why wives want to hold husbands accountable and why many wives become susceptible to the dark forces of the modern culture, of the wicker man culture, of the witchcraft traps that are outside of your marriage, waiting to lure your wife in and to steal her away from you. So I am never going to use this font again. So, how husbands hurt wives is unknowingly driving your wife into a place of isolation where she is seeking validation, support, and strength. And this is super duper important. I'm going to show you in just a minute when we kind of look at the Bible verses about this. Your wife is needing something that's going to empower her beyond the wounds that have been inflicted by the type of leadership or the lack of leadership that has been taking place in a relationship. And the wife, she unknowingly spirals into this self protection, pride, and rebellion that confirms all of the worst case scenarios and those fears that she has in her mind about you. And the confirmation of the worst case scenario is what makes her extremely vulnerable to these this dark culture that will give her a sense of belonging and make her feel loved because she will convince herself that you don't love her. So who is supposed to protect your wife when you hurt her? How is your wife being protected? The biggest like red flag here, if you are a husband that is listening to this information, is that you want to always be on guard that your wife is never in a place where she feels like she has to protect herself. And the way that wives communicate that, it could be very, very different. Some women will come right out and say that they don't feel safe. Some women will come out and say, I don't have anything else to say. I'm not talking anymore. They'll just stop talking to you when they don't feel safe with you. Some women will, recruit recruit help to protect her against you when she feels that you're no longer the one to protect her. And this is where the gate opens. This is where the danger zone happens when we as wives do not feel protected by our husband because our husband is hurting us to the point where we don't even feel safe with our husband. We don't feel safe speaking to our husband. We don't feel safe sharing our opinions with our husband. We don't feel safe coming to our husband to talk about things that we're interested in or information that we find valuable. When that lack of presence or leadership is there, where your woman is no longer talking, when she's not engaging in communication beyond how was your day, fine, how was yours, fine, what's for dinner, if that is the only conversation you and your wife are having, she does not feel that you are protecting her. Big, big, big red flag. So I want to go through some of the highlights of what actually happened in the Garden of Eden in Genesis chapter 3 to support the argument that I'm making here concerning the dark side of the culture, the witchcraft of the culture that is ready, willing, and able to come and seize your wife and deceive your wife and trick your wife and pull your wife away from you when she is not feeling protected by you. Now, the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. This is Genesis 3rd chapter, very first verse. We're introduced to the serpent. And when we look at how the serpent was described as mentally acute or penetrating, cunning, or crafty, right? When we're looking at these synonyms here, we're seeing tricky, foxy, insidious in operation. And why is this important? Well, this is important because when we're talking about the way your wife hurts, your wife is not in a mental state to fight mentally crafty deception. She's being guided by an emotion, and in her mind, her emotion makes sense. So anyone who speaks to her emotion in a way of tracking and validating and confirming what she's feeling and that she is valid and feeling the way that she feels, if she is being validated, then she can be subtly outwitted. And that's why we're looking at the serpent. Now, I don't know how my slide turned on me, but we'll keep it going. And so then the serpent said to the woman, yea, has God said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? This is still the very first verse of Genesis chapter 3. Well, what was he doing? He was undermining authority. The entire goal of witchcraft, of dark forces, of dark knowledge, of esoteric power. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about esoteric, hidden, dark power is to undermine authority. And so when men are saying to me, hey, I just wish my wife would submit, my wife doesn't submit to me. I don't know why my wife doesn't submit to me. Well, the culture itself is an anti authority culture. The popular culture of the world we live in hates authority. And so, if you, as the head of your house, right, you're supposed to be the leader, you're supposed to be the covering, is the other word that we use a lot in communities of faith, and you're not leading, or your leadership has driven your wife to a place of unresolved hurt, then the very first temptation that's coming for your wife is undermining your authority as the leader of your marriage, as the leader of your family, as the head of your house. And the serpent said unto the woman, you shall not surely die. For God does know that in the day you eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Genesis 3, 4-5. So, what witchcraft does, what the serpent does, what the culture, the dark forces of the dominant culture that we live in, what happens is, number one, challenging of your authority, because she is now in a place of hurt. She is now in a place where she does not feel protected by her man. And then the second temptation is lust, an appeal to her lust. How do we know this? And you shall be gods, as gods. Now, I didn't do it for the sake of this presentation, but you don't have to look very far on Google or any social media to find goddess, the term goddess, the heightened use of the word goddess. And this is the original lust, the original desire to be as gods. And how do we know this? How does the scripture prove to us that this was the lust? Well, we have to look at the consequences that the Most High gave to Eve to understand exactly what her lust was. And her consequence was that her desire would be for her husband, and that her husband would rule over her. So when we look at the consequence points to the lust that was being corrected. The lust to be a goddess, the lust to be as God, the lust for worship. And took a closer look at that word, rule over you. It comes from I got this from the Blue Letter Bible. I don't have the Strong's number, but the pronunciation is Mashal. And the meaning of it is have dominion over you. So her consequence concerning her husband, who she was created to be one with, she was created to be in agreement with, she was created to be as equal with, she was made his dominion. Now, unfortunately, too many husbands take authority, dominion, and submission to the point of something way off on the far end. But dominion is actually a word of responsibility. So by your wife being made your dominion, your wife is actually being made your responsibility. So it is now your responsibility that when your wife is hurting, when your wife is wounded emotionally, when your wife is no longer feeling safe, you have the responsibility to cure that issue. You have the responsibility to come and deal with that and to safeguard her from being in a place of being hurt. Because if not, your dominion can be invaded by dark forces of witchcraft, of the rebellion against your authority, and your house can be torn down because you are not treating her as the dominion that she was made to be. It doesn't mean you boss her around. It means the same way that when the Most High gives you a piece of property, your job over that piece of property is to care for it. Your job is to make sure that the grounds are kept. Your job is to make sure that it's not overgrown with weeds. Your job is to make sure that wild beasts don't come in and tear up your stuff. This is the same language that's being used here with respect to dominion. Oh, I do not like this font, y'all. It is really, really, really messing with me. Like I'm really having a hard time reading this. What does this say? How? Let me find it. I'm trying to I'm trying to adjust the size of it because it's like too big for me to make out. Okay. Oh, now I get to tell you how I got. This happened. This literally happened in our relationship in 2020. So my husband has the religious form of leadership, and during this time in 2020, he also was a lot more passively involved with household stuff. The lion's share of things, particularly dealing with our son, I was more actively engaged with those things, homeschooling him. I was starting my own business, walking away from my legal practice and a regular 9 to 5 and regular paycheck. And at the same time, in the aftermath of the pandemic, I took on the responsibility of homeschooling our son because my husband was leading from a passive place in his parenting during that time with respect to homeschooling. And whenever we would have our differences, when I would have my fits and cry out for help in ways that he felt were disrespectful, he would become aggressive in enforcing his authority and shutting down. He doesn't really do a whole lot of the yelling and stuff like that. But my husband is good for like saying, we're not going to talk about this right now, or putting a conversation off for hours or maybe even into the next day. And my frustration was mounting. So during my journey, one thing led to another where I was introduced to this lady. And the lady, she was recently divorced. She was an entrepreneur. She was in the work of empowering women, and I really felt like taken care of. I had a consultation with this lady, and I felt like she understood me. I felt like this lady and I really could this lady could really relate to me. She could really roll with me on an intellectual level and on a biblical level, because she was also a student of the Bible and she was saying all of the right things. And she was like living her best life in her newfound singleness after a divorce from her husband. And she and her husband were in ministry together, the whole 9 yards. And one thing led to another, and they divorced. So she was appealing to my lust for power, because in my marriage, I was dealing with a husband who was taking for granted how much I was already doing, how much responsibility I was already carrying, how much effort and guts and pain it took to step into the world of entrepreneurship. I was feeling so alone in that space. And along comes this lady who understood. She was an entrepreneur, she was a student of the Bible. She had gone through the pain of her husband divorcing her. And so I found immediate friendship and connection with her. Well, after that first consultation, this is the first consultation. During the first consultation, for the hour and a half, I met with this lady. I was nodding my head the whole time. She was hitting on all of the right notes. And I was like so excited about working with her on an ongoing basis and helping and empowering me and coaching me through my business. Well, after our call, I went and I just started consuming a bunch of her content and learning as much as I could about her. And then there was just something that was kind of off. I mean, it was nothing that she said. She was on point with a lot of the ways that she quoted this scripture, but I couldn't get a piece about her. The more I consumed her content, the less peace I had in my SPD through. So I went to bed that night, and I'll be doggone, y'all, that lady had created so much connection with me and so much agreement with me in that hour and a half consultation. Um, she had accessed me through astral projection. Again, I know this sounds spooky. I know most men don't want to talk about stuff like this. This stuff sounds over the top. I don't even like talking about it because I am a professional, for crying out loud. I'm about the law. I'm about logic. I'm about things that make sense and that you can prove. But I am telling you, this lady astral projected into my sleep. And that's when I was like, okay, Houston, we have a problem here. The situation went on to where the next day I got a strong check in my spirit. Break every agreement you made with her yesterday. Break every single agreement. And that's what I did. And I began to cry and pray and ask for repentance. How I ended up in agreement with this lady, and something was wrong with this lady, and this lady showing up astral projecting. Like, I was so spooked. And again, there was nothing that she had said that I could say, like that was the smoking gun. It was just that she had accessed dark forces that she was operating out of, but it had a Christian veneer on it. She was speaking out of the Bible. She was speaking about Christ. She was speaking, like, she was saying all of the right churchy stuff, y'all. She wasn't talking crystals and chakras. Not that I had become aware of. She was talking pure Bible, but she was speaking esoterically, and I didn't understand how people use the Bible esoterically before this encounter. So I repented and I began kind of doing my due diligence with contacting a mutual acquaintance to find out more about her and why I had that crazy experience in my sleep. that night. And the mutual acquaintance wasn't much help and really kind of gave me a side eye for questioning this lady's spirituality because again, she had a very strong Christian veneer and I couldn't completely explain what it was that I was experiencing to the mutual acquaintance. So I kind of left it alone. Over the course of a couple of weeks, a few short months, the I'm gonna call her a witch. She had reached back out to me. Now I'm gonna tell you this. She lived on the other side of the country, right? So let's say she lived in Arizona. I'm in Atlanta. She lived in Arizona. And all of a sudden, a few short weeks after meeting me, she reached out to tell me that not only was she, oh, no, no, she told me she was relocating to Georgia. So she relocated to Georgia to this this city that is kind of remote. It wasn't in Atlanta. So I was like, okay, she's not right around the corner, so I don't have to worry about her. Now, I still did not tell my husband about this situation. This is what I'm gonna get to in a few minutes. She moves all the way across the country to this small town in Georgia. And a few weeks after she lands, she texts me and she asked me to pray for her to have favor to relocate where I stay. So I'm like, no, honey, I am not agreeing with you for anything. Like, no. And I kind of I kind of threw up a block against her asking for me to come into agreement in prayer with her. But I felt like, and this could be completely off the wall, but I felt like you're trying to move into my territory. Like you're literally relocating yourself into my territory. And my agreement was necessary for her to come here. By the way, this was 2020. We're going into 2025. And that was nearly 5 years ago. She never successfully moved into my city, but she was seeking my agreement at that time. And I began to get total cringe. She, two other women and one man began to I began to notice that all of them were like surrounding me on social media. Like I'm not even on social media like that. I've never really been on social media like that. But all of y'all that's like connected to this lady are all like following me on social media. And I was getting the sense that they were looking to harvest information. And so the person who had the most access to me became the one who would come and ask me questions specifically about my business, about the money I was making, about how business was going. And the Holy Spirit gave me a strategy for kind of like throwing up blocks. Because y'all don't need to know all of that about what I got going on over here at my business. So eventually, I felt so overwhelmed by the presence of these three women and this one man who were all like connected and all monitoring me on social media. I finally broke down and I told my husband. I told my husband. And in response, my husband, and because when I came to my husband, I said, I need you to pray for me and I need your covering and I need you to know what I've got myself into and what I've done. So I came completely clean with my husband, and he said to me, he was like, "You're moving like you're by yourself." And he was 100% right. I was moving like I was by myself. Why? Because the way that he had hurt me with his religious form of leadership, the way that he was passively leading and not seeing where he could step up in the area of homeschooling our son, the way that he was showing up and aggressively enforcing his right to be the head of the house had hurt me to the point where I did not feel safe coming to him. I did not feel safe talking to him. I did not feel protected by him. And this is how this door was even open for this witch to even get me like she got me. And that is why I'm telling this story. That is why I'm sharing this information, because when you understand the law of the spirit realm, and you understand agreement, then you understand like this lady had access to me in my most vulnerable state because I was agreeing with her, because she was seeing me as an unprotected woman, because she had recognized that she had an open door to someone who she could get to come into agreement with her for her purposes, and she was doing it through a dark source. This is how you don't astral project without the help of demonic help. But I'm not going to go deep into that. So that is what happened to me, and that is how I had to come running back to my husband for his protection, for his prayer, for his covering, so that I can find safety in him again and protection under his agreement from these people that had been monitoring me. And that situation had finally kind of resolved itself in about 6 months. But it was only after I shared with my husband what I had been going through for like 3 months by myself. 3 months later, I no longer had the issue. I no longer had this sense of being monitored. I no longer felt the threat of these four people who were too busy trying to influence me in ways that I was not in agreement with. So this illustration is to map out what it is that women desire, what it is that we're wired to desire, but can ultimately become lust that the enemy can take advantage of. Like, we all want to have a sense of importance, and we all want to have a sense of power, and that's natural for us to feel that way. And we know this from the scripture because, as again, looking at the consequences of disobedience, hatred was put between the woman and the snake, and a promise was made that the woman's seed would destroy the serpent's seed. So this speaks to the importance of the woman, the value of the woman, and the power of the woman. And that is something that all women desire. And sometimes husbands overlook, or husbands take for granted. And when those things are taken for granted, your wife can be vulnerable to dark forces outside of your home. We as women, we want to be productive. So when you look at the curse that speaks of productivity, it was that the woman would bring forth children, except that her sorrow was multiplied as a part of that curse that was placed on female. But our desire, and we are created to be productive. We are also created to have our own mind. We have autonomy. We have our opinions. We have the way that we see and think and feel, and those things belong uniquely to us. And this is how all human beings are made, which is why the number one encroachment and evil of witchcraft is manipulation, to seek to override what another person's will is. When you seek to deceive or override another person's autonomy, their right to their free will, you are operating directly in opposition to the created order, because not even the creator himself violates our right to make choices. He doesn't do it. He operates through the law of agreement, through the law of covenant. He does not manipulate the will of men. But then you have the lust, or the desire to be worshiped. And this is the top part, the lust part, the dangerous part. This is the one that opens up the doorway to wicker man dark forces, to the anti-male influences, to the all of the women out here who are waving the flags of independence and we don't need a man. All of that stuff resides at the top of this pyramid, which is the desire to be the object of worship or the goddess. And we all have to fight it. All of us. We all have to fight. And we all have to keep all of these desires and lusts in their proper perspective. And none of us should seek worship. It's natural to seek to be desired by our husband, but to at the point where we want to dominate over our husband or be worshiped by our husband, that is where it crosses over into evil. So when this whole episode at the Garden of Eden, it took place over a tree that was called the knowledge of good and evil. Like, this is about the source that provides us with the thing that we want. Like, you want to be important and you want to be valuable, but you switch over to the dark side when you astral project and have power to be showing up in people's sleep, to leave your body to go show up in somebody else's bedroom. That's a dark power versus the power that is created in you with your gifts, talents, and abilities that come from the tree of life, the creator of life. You are choosing to go to another source. And it's the same thing with all of our desires, that when we want to be productive, but do you want to be productive according to the gifts and the talents that were created in you from the tree of life? Or do you want to turn to a dark source in order to feel fulfilled in that area of productivity? So each and every one of the desires, and those desires become lust when we look at a source other than the tree of life, when we're looking at a dark source. And that's why, again, I'm speaking about esoteric usages of the Bible, because it is so abundant out here. There is no, like, there's no shortage of prophetesses and prophets out here capturing people by their heartstrings and telling them what thus says the Lord, and that you'll never hurt another day in your life, like all this kind of stuff, speaking to their lust and their desire to have power, their desire to overcome the hurt, their desire to protect themselves. There is no shortage of people that are out here waiting to lure wives into this trap and convince wives, you don't need him, you'll be happier without him, you could just go and take your kids and make him pay child support. Like, this is the narrative that's taking place out here in the wicker man culture. So when you're a religious man, your source of your leadership and how you're leading your wife is a self-righteousness. It's self-righteous. And your wife, she's going to respond to that self-righteousness by rejecting your leadership. And in many cases, with religious men who are not leading from a place of example and walking out and living out what they profess out of their mouth, their wives even reject their faith. They don't even want to go to the same church. They don't want to even follow the same religious leader. They don't want to have anything to do with their husband's form of faith, because it's religious and it's self-righteous, and no woman will respect that in her husband. No respect for self-righteousness. When you are a passive man, then your source is fear and or laziness. By allowing your wife to pick up the heavier burden of your house, And your wife's response is going to be resentment for your lack of leadership. When you are a husband that leads by aggression, your source is rebellion against the created order, again, because your wife was made your dominion, a place of love, a garden, a place to care for, to be concerned about, not to yell at, blame, or shut down on, but to nurture and care for. And your wife's response to this form of leadership is rebellion. And rebellion is witchcraft. Going back to the show that we did on the wife who stole the witch who stole your man, we talked about the connection between rebellion and witchcraft. So you have a husband leading through a witchcraft source and a wife responding in a witchcraft source. So now you have a witchcraft agreement that's operating in your relationship. But when you value your wife and you make room for her gifts, for her leadership, because she has things that she's strong in that complement you, that she does better than you, that she's more capable than you. When you value her for those things and you make room for her in those giftings, then your wife, she feels honored and esteemed, and she don't need to go running to, the astral projection lady to feel honored and esteemed, because she's already getting that at home. When you respect your wife's desire to be productive and acknowledged and appreciated for the things that she does for you and for your household and for your family, then your wife feels respected for her contributions. When you are receptive to your wife's criticism without becoming defensive, and there is a right and a wrong way to criticize. I'm not going to give the wives a pass on how we do that, because there's a right way to do it. But for too many husbands, even when your wife comes to you respectfully, it doesn't matter if she comes to you after the game. It doesn't matter if she comes to you after you've already relaxed after coming home from work. The time of the day doesn't matter. Her tone doesn't matter. Anytime she has tried to come to you and to give you constructive feedback about your leadership and you become defensive, when you no longer do that, then your wife feels cherished and she will gladly follow your lead because she feels heard and she feels understood. Because we as wives, we were designed to lead alongside the authority in our life, to lead alongside our husbands, to support our husbands in your leadership. We were designed to lead alongside you, which is why we crave and we desire leadership in our husbands, and why we will gladly submit to our husband's leadership when we are feeling honored, respected, and loved. And just a quick few notes for the wives. If your husband doesn't value you for your gifts and your unique abilities, here are a couple of things that you can do. Remember that you are such a powerful influence to your husband, that this was the reason why Adam blamed Eve. Eve was such a powerful influence. Wives, we are such a powerful influence. Our husbands desire us. And there's a story in the book of, it's not Enoch. I can't think of it. I'll post a link to the reference, but it's an apocryphal book that talks about a contest between the king's soldiers, and whoever won the contest would be called the king's cousin and honored by the king. And so the king, he hosted this whole gathering of his elders and the people in his court to hear this contest between his three soldiers. And the first soldier, he made the argument that the strongest of all is alcohol, and all of the reasons why alcohol is so strong and influential over the hearts of men. And then the second soldier, he argued that the strongest of all was the king, and all of the reasons why the king was the strongest of all. And the third soldier argued that the strongest of all were women. But beyond women, the strongest was wisdom. And the soldier who argued that women were the strongest, and he gave all of his reasons why, particularly our influence over the heart of the king, even. He was the one who won the contest. So the influence of you as a wife is very powerful. And I'm sharing that with you directly from the scriptures as something for you to remember and hold on to. If you're not feeling like you're getting that at home, your husband can learn how to communicate that to you. He can learn how to display that to you. But if it's something that's lacking in your life right now, I want to encourage you to remember that, yes, you are a powerful influence. You are gifted and you are talented, and you're even the apple of your creator's eye. He knew you before you were even formed in your mother's womb, and he placed his love upon you. So if you're not feeling that from your husband, then you can definitely turn right back to the source of the Most High, the creator who made you, and just soak in him as your source if your husband is lacking in that area. If your husband has not expressed appreciation for all of the things that you do, wives, I want to encourage you to forgive your husband. Forgive him for his lack of leadership in that area. And you continue to do your thing, and do not allow resentment, bitterness, or anger to take root in your heart, because this is exactly how the door opens to dark forces like the witch who I got by. Like the witch I went running back to my husband to tell him about, to seek his protection and his safety. And that was because I was operating in a place of unforgiveness when I became exhausted and I felt invisible for all the stuff that I was doing, and I wasn't getting any appreciation or gratitude for during that season of our marriage. And wife, if you feel you are not desirable to your husband, or that you would be happier with being or operating independently of him, then I want you to remember that the goddess culture thrives on women who are hurting from the wounds that men have inflicted on us, where we felt like, rightfully or wrongfully, because sometimes we impose expectations on our husbands that are not based in reality, or that are not even our husband's responsibility. But I want you to remain vigilant, because this culture thrives on your pain and seeing you ripped away from your man. I read a Reddit post today where this guy, his wife, she was suffering from depression. And while in her depressed state, he did what he felt like he should do to show up and encourage her, that he was able to overcome depression by developing a habit of going to the gym and working out and taking care of his body. And so he began going with her, but he couldn't go with her as often as she went. He was putting on weight at his job had a promotion and he wasn't as active. He's putting on weight, but she was losing weight. And so as she's losing weight, she's getting her confidence up and she's getting the attention of other men, right? That desire to be desired was becoming a lust and her seeking worship. And her husband had a conversation with her about how her new appearance and her new confidence was beginning to disrupt their marriage. But she had gotten to the point where all of this newfound confidence and all this newfound attention from other men and other people telling her how amazing and awesome she was looking, that she divorced her husband a month later. And as this guy is writing the Reddit post, they're in the middle of divorce proceedings. Court is coming up in a couple of weeks. And after not having spoken to his wife in months, and right at the doorstep of getting a divorce, she began reaching out to him, wanting to come back into the relationship. And he was writing the post trying to find out, what should I do? He's like, 99%, I'm not going back. She she messed up a good thing, but she got by the culture. I tell their story to illustrate how that desire to be worshiped, that desire to be desirable, it can go too far. And that's what the dominant culture thrives on. And too many women find themselves looking back at a relationship that they messed up and realizing that they messed up because they were caught up in their feelings. They weren't thinking, they weren't understanding spiritual law, and they were chasing after a lust that eventually left them by themselves and looking stupid. And this is what happened to this one particular wife. So, who is the Law for Love family? Many people wonder and ask, who does Law for Love help? And I want to just be very straightforward here. We work with men of faith who love their wives, but struggle with communicating their feelings constructively, and they are also absolutely confused by their wife's behavior. So men who they don't get their wives, they don't understand why she's so emotional, why she's so angry, and they have a hard time communicating with their wives in a way that their wives can receive what they're saying. We work with husbands in that space. We work with women of faith who are incredibly gifted and talented, but they feel invisible, overwhelmed, or lost in their marriage that has consumed her identity and left her feeling frustrated and disconnected from her man. So those are the women we work with. And we also work with couples of faith who are sleeping in separate bedrooms, are not having sex at all, and they are ready, willing, and able to do the work to reconnect on a deeper level to find purpose and meaning in their marriage within the next 7 weeks. We have helped families who are not even getting busy in the bedroom, y'all, in less than 7 weeks reconnect in such a meaningful way that the wife returns to the bedroom. And it has mostly been wives leaving the bedroom. Men leave the bedroom as well, but our work has been specifically helping a wife feel safe to talk to her husband and to return to the bedroom so that they can get back to getting busy in intimacy in their covenant. So thank you for joining me for this discussion about closing the gates of darkness in the area of safeguarding your marriage against the forces of darkness. This is the work that I do here at Law for Love, where the law, the spirit, and the compassion, we bring it all together for very meaningful and powerful outcomes for our families. This is what we do, taking the worst of marriage. I wrote the book, How Not to Be a Wife, and the lessons learned that even my husband has begun unpacking as a direct result of my learning how to respect spiritual law and honor spiritual law so that he would no longer be able to blame me for why he wasn't doing better in his leadership. This has been my personal journey through marriage, and I am so honored to be in a place where I can actually help and walk families through this process. So that would end the presentation. I can take a minute to try and read these comments. And I appreciate y'all. You know this. I'm just going to try to move these to a place where I can see them a little easier. And make sure I'm showing up for y'all. So, yes, Salama Team Truth, thank you for joining me. Nayazeki, blessings, peace, and blessings to you. Thank you for joining. Exactly, Nayazeki. The bad boss B culture is wicker man culture. I don't care what label y'all put on it. I don't care what kind of new branding you put on it. It is wicker man 101. And a lot of women do not realize it and are getting caught up in the glory and the allure of being a boss bee. And like, baby, you're gonna find your man stepping out on you or making plans to leave you when you come in with that wicker man energy. A man, he ain't putting up with that. Yeah, so Sister Sharice, so it's not defined. It's Sister Shar. I am an individual with an injury. I have an eye injury that makes it harder for me to see what I'm seeing. So I'm glad y'all were able to see it because I'm never using that font again. Thank you. Look, thank you, brother Team Truth. Look, this was like people go up there, they go to the front of the church and sing, and they had all the nerves in their voice. Take your time and sing it right. I appreciate your patience. Thank you. We do lust after power, and it is a part of finding a way to protect ourselves when we've been hurt. It's men do it too. Like, I'm not just picking on women here, but women, we need to be more honest about our power lust. We mask it and we conceal it to look like we're taking care of everybody else, but what we're really doing, we're amassing power. So we definitely want power to not feel pain or to protect ourselves from our man when our man hurts us. Yes, brother Team Truth, that have an astro projected into my sleep. Yes, my spidey senses were tingling. Something was off with that lady, and we found out that night this lady ain't right. That lady was not right. Plenty and plenty of darkness. Yes, and we have to remain vigilant. All of this stuff is darkness. All of these things are dark sources. All of these things open you up to the operation of demons in your life. Demons come to deceive and they come to oppress. And then you find yourself out of control. The power you thought you were gaining, you find out that you've yielded yourself to a demon. So if you are out here fooling with this stuff, the crystals, the manifestations, the chakras, all of this other esoteric knowledge, all of these things, they are unsubmitted, uncovered pursuits of power. It is an uncovered pursuit of power. And what is so amazingly bizarre about the pursuit of power in this esoteric, in this dark realm, you still submitting to a demon. So wouldn't you be in a better position to just submit to your own husband and submit to the created order, to the creator of life, submit to the authority of Yahushua HaMashiach, and be in a place of safety from demonic activity? I'm just asking, if you're going to end up getting played by a demon, because that's what you're messing with when you're messing with that stuff. So I would take it you were talking here, brother, about the patience husband should have for his wife. Yes, like she's your garden, right? And with gardening, you don't put a seed in the ground and you have a fruit or a vegetable the very next day, right? There's a patience that comes with that. And that's the one thing I could say. Like my husband has his ways and he knows he's difficult, but he has stayed the course long enough. And I've told husbands this, husbands who talk to me and they're like, "You're so rational. I wish my wife was more rational like you." I'm like, "You should talk to my husband about the wife, the wife I was before I got to this point." Because I was off the chain. In fact, it was several years that had passed before my husband began to notice the change in me when I began to go through healing and deliverance. He was still expecting the same runaway bride behavior. He was still expecting the same angry, unforgiving Shar. And that was mostly what his reference point was until several years had passed by. And he recognized, like, we're not fighting every Friday anymore. She hasn't run out of the house and driven off anywhere. She hasn't stopped off and told me she wants a divorce. Like he, for whatever reason, he began to take inventory. And that one particular week, I will always remember this week because my husband had me cracking up laughing. It was Hell Week. I don't know if y'all read Can't Hurt Me. What's the brother's name that the former Navy SEAL that wrote that book, David Goggins. I learned about Hell Week from David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. My husband took me on Hell Week, y'all. 7 whole days of hell. He pressed every button he knew to get me to cuss him out, to get me to get mad at him, to get me to pop off. And nothing he did was working because he I don't know why y'all men are like this. Y'all always testing somebody. Women, I don't know. I'm not that woman that be testing like that. Do women test men like that? I know this men test women a lot. So anyway, he's trying to get a reaction. No reaction. 7 whole days. So finally, that Saturday came because the hell week started on a Monday. Saturday came. I was on my way to bed. He came in the room. He asked me, "What do you want from me?" And I'm like, what are you talking about? What do I want from you? He said, you got to want something. What do you want from me? Where's my wife? That's what he asked me. My husband said, "Where is my wife?" So I laughed him off, told him I love him, went to bed. Day 7, Sunday. He pushed some buttons. I didn't respond because I look, this is healed Shar. Shar done got to understand this. Shar's been applying the law to her life. Shar has been operating from a healed place as a wife, not depending on him to do better, by the way. Not depending on him to do better. Just going through my process. Me and my father. My father took me on a journey and he restored me. Day 7, husband come in the room. "What do you want from me?" So I bust out laughing at this point. I'm like, "What are you talking about? Where's my wife?" And I'm laughing, I'm laughing, I'm laughing. And my husband stops and he looks at me and he says, "I think I like you now." And all I could do was laugh because he finally got evidence and proof that something drastically had changed in his wife. And so yes, that's why I so freely share our journey because we ain't going back to where we were. We're not doing that again. Wicker Man, Wicker Man was the witch movie, brother. Team Truth. That that was the that was a coven, and all those men's tongues were cut out their mouth because the women didn't want to hear nothing a man had to say. They were the ones that were responsible for letting them have babies, and they did all the heavy lifting. They were doing the wood chopping and lifting. That was the witch movie. Hey, Sister Lashonda Salama. Oh, thank you so much. I love you so much. And I really, really appreciate you and every one of you who support the Law for Love ministry and the work that we do. I'm so passionate about families. I think I got your your husband had to experience the new wife and you, Nayuzeki. Hallelujah. I am just so thankful for the transformative power of love. And again, it's the revelation of the law, the biblical law, the and all of the power that we have. Stop waiting to live and love and be yourself. Stop waiting for your husband or your wife to change. No, you don't have to do that. You literally can begin walking into a fullness of being and living and invite your spouse to come on the ride for you. They get to see and know the you who is free from waiting and demanding and pressuring and manipulating and threatening. Let's be done with that. That is not a happy place to be. So thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing, for supporting Law for Love, where we promote the law for healing families, connecting communities, and love that transforms the world. I love you all and have a wonderful, wonderful night.